It's Numbers Don't Lie here on CBS Sports Golazo, powered by Sofascore. Chris Wittyngham Nico Cantor here talking Real Madrid against Manchester City, the big matchup in Champions League. And several reports in Spain are hinting that this might be Xabi Alonso's last chance to save his job against Manchester City in the Champions League. What?
It's December. We thought Xabi Alonso was going to be a transformational manager for Real Madrid. Instead, he's 4 months into his managerial reign, and there's already talk about him being out if they don't win this game, which is shocking to me, and I think is an indication of how maybe a manager with his kinds of methods isn't going to work in the longer term at Real.
All right, let's anticipate to see what will go on between these two teams and see who's got the edge. Chime in throughout this video, throughout this segment. If you're watching on YouTube, if you're watching on CBS Sports Golazo, give us your thoughts. We'll read you out throughout all of our platforms here on CBS Sports Golazo. All right, Rudiger hasn't played much in the Champions League. You see that his Sofascore is nothing. Meanwhile, you got players like Asensio, Valverde playing right back. I think Xabi Alonso is going to have to deal with his back line in a very particular way because it is very, very thin at the moment. You got Tchouaméni, Camavinga, Arda Güler. Vini isn't in great run of form. The only person that really is Kylian Mbappé and probably Thibaut Courtois, I would say. I think those have been the two pillars for Real Madrid this season.
No doubt. I actually think that midfield has performed reasonably well. Obviously, the numbers back that up. But I think you see a team in the Champions League that is showing a level of underperformance in Real Madrid, which is compared to Manchester City. We got green numbers all the way down here. I think this front four from Man City has really established itself with Doku, Foden, and Cherki in behind Erling Haaland. I think Josko Gvardiol is having a very good season as well. And Gianluigi Donnarumma has come up with the goods and a lot of key moments for Manchester City. So I think you're starting to see a City side under Guardiola that is coming together.
All right, so when these two teams go toe for toe, we're asking who has the edge, and we're going to break this down with a whole plethora of stats. It's actually called Z-score, so don't worry. It's much simpler than it sounds. For every team across Europe, we look at 4 categories to rank them from 0 to 100. You see there on the scale, it goes from Lecce to Manchester City, and those 4 categories are attacking, defending, possession, and intensity. Each category, though, has a bunch of stats that influence it. So, for example, in attacking, we look at goals per game, expected goals, big chances created, amongst others. Then we measure how far above or below the average each team performs in that category. That difference is the Z-score. The better you are compared to the rest of the pack, the higher your score. We combine all of those numbers into one final rating from 0 to 100. So when you see a team rise or fall in our rankings, it's not opinion, it's math. So let's look at the attacking numbers for both of these teams. And as you see on the spectrum, they fall all the way to the right. We're splitting hairs here between Manchester City and Real Madrid falling into the elite category. I mean, goals per game, they're scoring well above 2. Expected goals per game, Manchester City is actually outperforming by a little bit. Real Madrid underperforming. Big chances per game, more for Real Madrid than for Manchester City, and that's why it's Real Madrid that's just outperforming by 6 points on our Z-score rating, Manchester City on the attacking score.
Is this an indication in your view that maybe the conversation on Real being negative is a bit overdone, that they are still creating a lot, that they are still creating big chances per game, and maybe this sort of underperformance that you mentioned will get solved over time?
I think this is a very Kylian Mbappé heavy statistical category, and he's that good that he can sway these numbers in his favor. I think there's a lot of footballing problems happening at Real Madrid, and it just feels like there's this dependence, and if he doesn't score, they won't get it to go. Whereas I think Erling Haaland and Manchester City have a different story to tell.
Yeah, I think obviously these are the two informed strikers along with Harry Kane right now in Europe. I think when you look at maybe where Real is struggling at the moment, I think Man City will have to improve. This could also be a Ballon d'Or level conversation with the way that these two players have been performing this season. 25 goals to 20. Mbappé is again performing in a team where the results maybe aren't quite there. I still think though he is delivering a really high level. Goals plus assists, second in Europe's top 5 leagues. Goal involvements in terms terms of percentage, is #1, and he is rated right now by Sofascore as the best performing player in Europe, game in and game out, which makes sense based off of the eye test as well. But I think it's more, and you mentioned that dependence, this is absolutely the figure that shows that. 57% of the goals the Real Madrid have scored have involved Mbappé in some way.
I mean, imagine if he had a little bit more of a helping hand with Vini, with Rodrigo, who's on this record dry spell, right? With Jude Bellingham, even finding that partner. Arda Güler at moments looked like he was going to be that really great midfielder that could partner and provide for Kylian Mbappé, but it's dimmed down a little bit, that light, that bright moment that they connected earlier in the season. So it just feels like it's become a very Kylian Mbappé heavy team and not a strong collective performance week in, week out from this group.
Which might not necessarily be his fault, but I think it is perhaps the biggest thing for them to figure out going forward. Now, you look at Erling Haaland for Manchester City, I think his figures have been fantastic as well. And there was at one point this season that sort of similar level of dependence. If he didn't score, Man City didn't score. I think that has actually improved in recent times, but still, the numbers are staggering. Obviously, this is before the international break in November. 19 goals, 68 minutes per goals, thereabouts, but a significant overperformance of the expected goals. That has changed since the international window now. We've only seen the 1 goal since, and I think you look at this underperformance in terms of expected goals. He's still getting very good chances. He just isn't converting them right now, and his Sofascore rating has gone down. Is that a worry for you at all going into this game that Haaland hasn't delivered his best form?
No, I think it's a worry for Real Madrid because Haaland is going to be very hungry to come out, especially when Real Madrid this week hit them where it hurts. But we'll see what type of Erling Braut Haaland we get. Now that you say about that XG underperformance and the fact that he gets great chances, I would love one day to do a breakdown, and we definitely can in future episodes, and ask whether Erling Haaland is an elite finisher, because sometimes he has chances that are so easy that you think, okay, this is going to be a goal, and he misses, and then he'll create a chance out of absolutely nowhere that no footballer on earth has any business scoring. It's very strange. He's this anomaly of a human being, of an athlete, and he's absolutely incredible. But it is interesting to see the plethora of opportunities that this guy has there. He scores sometimes the most difficult, and he misses sometimes the easiest. But the sheer amount of goals that he scores is astonishing.
Astonishing. Now, I think we look now going into this game for Manchester City against Real Madrid. And one of the things that will be fascinating, Xabi Alonso also wanted to implement a style of possession-based football. We know that Manchester City under Pep Guardiola are doing a very similar thing. So let's read how these teams are in their use of the ball. And so we look so far in this season, Manchester City, in terms of average possession, is just slightly better. But still, again, we're talking about 59.6 for Real Madrid. That is a slight difference in their style of play compared to how they were under Carlo Ancelotti in terms of field tilt. These are very similar numbers all the way down. The one difference that does give a slight advantage to Real Madrid is the percentage of passes that go forward. But again, if we're talking about our Z-score spectrum from bad teams in Europe all the way to the best teams, these are the very elite in terms of possession and their ability on the ball. So I think we see a Man City side coming into this game. We'll be curious if they can go away from home and compete in terms of their ability to retain the ball.
Okay, let's talk about defense. And it's actually crazy to me that Real Madrid is so high up on this scale, because there have been questions defensively, especially how thin they are. They've conceded almost a goal a game, just like Manchester City, but they're actually overperforming that, right? I think it's because they also have a really good goalkeeper. Manchester City has more errors per game that lead to a goal. Real Madrid just about under 1. And they're at 83 and 84, but that still kind of puts them in that top echelon of teams. I'm just thinking, it's like, wow, there must be very poor defensive teams after that, because I wouldn't rate necessarily Real Madrid as a top defensive team.
Yeah, they had a lot of games, I think, against weaker opposition earlier in the year where they just didn't allow much. But I think when teams can attack them and get at them, I think this is sort of one of the things. Even you go back to that game against Liverpool, they lost in the Champions League, where they were opened up in space. And I think this is sort of one of the things that is concerning. Poor in terms of counterattacking, we'll call them. Fast break goals conceded here. The through balls allowed, the errors that lead to a goal, and even penalties committed as well. I think there are times where it's difficult at times for some teams to put them under pressure. But when you do, you can get at them. And I think some of that has changed as the personnel has evolved over the course of the season.
It's funny because we're getting this Real Madrid-Manchester City matchup again in the Champions League. And for the last couple of seasons, it's been the highest of the high
Clash of the
performance
Titans.
of Titans. And over the last year, both of these teams have dropped off, and it's kind of who's worse at the moment. That's like the measuring stick right now. Like, is City good enough to beat Manchester City, or is Manchester City good enough to beat this questionable Real Madrid, and vice versa? And a big factor in that is intensity. And this very modern component of football is important. So opponents' actions allowed per possession won. They're very similar. Duels contested per game. Real Madrid is getting stuck in it more. But of those duels won, it's almost 50-50 for both teams, which is obviously a good measuring stick because these two teams are some of the most intense teams in Europe.
This is one of the rubrics I think Xabi Alonso is most judging his team against. He actually said after they lost to the weekend to Celta Vigo that he felt that they were more intense and applied themselves more down to 10 men than they did as 11v11 players. So Xabi Alonso is constantly asking for more defensive effort from his team. Honestly, maybe even too much in the perspective of some of the players. So we know that this is a key part of the game for Real Madrid.
I mean, so let's see. Let's all the four categories. Where does this stack up? They're all in the dark blue. Real Madrid and Manchester City, we're splitting hairs here at the moment. We really are. So it kind of, through the stats, I question whether Real Madrid's crisis at the moment or bad run of form, really bad run of form, a lot of media outlets, if it is that bad, from all of the top 5 teams, they're ranked 5th on our Z-score scale.
Right. And look, let's be very clear that at Real Madrid, they expect to be number 1.
Correct.
All the time.
Yeah.
And so I understand there's that level of expectation, but I think at the moment they're going through some growing pains under a new manager, both in terms of the personnel with the players, I think, in the dressing room, not responding always to the way that Xabi Alonso is coaching them right now, but also they're employing a new tactical style. I think they have to make evolutions on what they've been in previous editions in order to fit this modern era. But I think the interesting one here is City, where they are currently sat in 8th. When they came to the Champions League knockouts last year and they got knocked out by Real Madrid, it was a real sign that they were off the pace, significantly off the pace from the top teams in Europe, having just won the Premier League, having again just won the Champions League a few seasons earlier. I think now, with the way that they are playing, this is a great game for them to play to see where they are now. Have they made a big step forward from March to December to show they can maybe go on to compete to win this Champions League, when I don't think last year they were anywhere near it?
All right, so this is the form guide for both of these teams. The pre-match odds to win the entire thing for both are very similar. And they have been very similar per all of our stats that we've shown. 11% for Real Madrid to win the Champions League before this match, 10% for Manchester City. It's incredible to see where these teams are compared to where they've been. But it's still very early in the European football season, and so much more can be written. But what we will know, we'll get an answer to see who's got the edge between Real Madrid and Manchester City very, very soon. Hey, thanks for watching this video from Numbers Don't Lie. Be sure to catch our show every Monday at 5 p.m. on YouTube. And for news and insights from leagues all around the world, including Serie A, EFL, and all UEFA competitions, both men's and women's, don't forget to sign up for Paramount+.